Hello and welcome to Hawkeye Nation. This is HawkCast, your Iowa football, basketball, and recruiting podcast brought to you by Hawkeye Beacon and Rivals.com. I am your recruiting analyst and host, Eliot Clough, at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined as always by publisher Adam Jacoby. No Ross Binder this evening, but Adam and I here to give you your post-game content after the 40-16 win by the Iowa Hawkeyes in Kinnick Stadium. Before we get started on that, make sure that you drop a like, drop a comment here on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And also, drop that rate and review. It does help us out a ton on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify as well. So, big victory, but maybe a bigger victory in the grand scheme of things for Kirk Ferentz. He reaches 200 wins for his career at Iowa. Adam, you've been around covering the team, watching during the Kirk Ferentz era for a long time. Obviously, it meant something to Kirk, but he's just kind of on to the next one.
Yeah, there for as much as he gets choked up about moments like these, they're usually not, he doesn't usually get choked up over the big milestones, over the round numbers. Like he acknowledges that it's significant, but it's always the, sort of the quality of performance or, the bigger moments. It's sort of a game by game thing with him. And it probably sort of has to be if you're going to coach for long enough to rack up 200 wins. But there was one point where he was thinking about all the people that he worked with, all the people that he's got in that room, and just a little bit, just one little bit, he got choked up in that press conference, but it wasn't anything close to the waterworks that we see in other situations. There was one little other point to that we noticed, and I think anybody who was watching the stream and hadn't ducked out at that point, but at the end, Beth Getz, the AD, crashes the podium, crashes the press conference, and makes it a point to be right there next to Kirk to honor his victory, and sort of mention how special he is to the University of Iowa, and also sort of mention that he doesn't bring that credit upon himself. And I thought that was a really cool, a really gracious moment, especially when you consider that Getz's tenure as the official, not acting AD, started a little bit rocky, especially with Kirk in particular. And so to go from that, yeah, we just fired your kid and I decided it, and that's what we're going to do, to, something like this also really felt like a real full circle moment. And, sort of a little bit more, I shouldn't say more unity or anything like that, but it certainly, I think, puts whatever lingering, bad taste that might have been in anybody's blood, and that includes fans or whoever. I think seeing those two have that really, I mean, a genuinely touching moment with each other, I think that should put all that to bed. All of that early hostility, I would say, or early mistrust between the two, early whatever you want to call it. It's done. It's done. And I thought that was a smart move in a lot of ways for Beth. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, I think it was too. I think it showed that their relationship has progressed in that department, and Kirk really did appear to appreciate it. That
Yes.
she went up there and talked in front of everybody, and Beth just continues to make an excellent impression, not only on fans, but I think on staff in athletics at Iowa. Yeah, it was the right move. Just hiring her full time, and I just can. She does such a great job with us. And it's, I wish folks could see her behind the scenes with the cameras off, because she's just awesome. Like, of course, she
Yeah.
has to be, a little different when the cameras are on in terms of answering questions and how she, because you have to be strategic as an AD, especially big picture when you don't know how things are going to go. But I mean, cameras are off and she's awesome. But I mean, she's great on camera too, for that matter. But I you don't need my Beth Getz endorsement here on HawkCast, but I thought that was a cool moment too for her to do that. If you didn't see it, we have entirety of Kirk's post game presser on Hawkeye Beacon, as well as that clip. That clip is on my Twitter. I clipped it out and put it on Twitter. It's just at Eliot Clough right there, so you can find it. It's, if you haven't seen it already on Twitter, it's doing pretty well because it was a cool moment. So yeah, definitely wanted to hit on that to start. But to get to the game again, 40-16 over Washington. Probably the most, well, it's definitely the most complete game we've seen from Iowa to date. It's been, I know you hate to hear it, tale of two halves for the entirety of these first few games for Iowa, but not so much today. Really a complete game, a game of complementary football, like we've heard from Kirk Ferentz. Sure, the secondary still isn't what it was last season. I mean, how can you expect to replace Cooper DeJean, right? That's just, it's just a difficulty in itself. But a lot of the bend but don't break for today for the Iowa defense, and we saw the big plays from the defense, and that was something that you wrote about post game. I mean, 4 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, which of course those coincide, but 2 forced fumbles and 2 sacks by Aaron Graves. One was recovered by Max Llewellyn, interception by Jamari Harris, blocked field goal, like big plays kind of galore for the team. Mostly in the second half though, right?
Yeah, mostly in the second half. And what was really remarkable about this performance for the defense is Washington's first 2 drives of the game went 14 yards, and that ended with a blocked field goal by Y.A. Black, which when I talked to Jay Higgins after the game, he mentioned that block specifically is really setting the tone for the defense, even though, technically it's a special teams play. But again, that's complementary football for you. But once that second half started, Washington started to drive on and really pushed into Iowa territory on that first drive. And then Will Rogers throws just a poor decision, but a great play by Jamari Harris to not only pick the ball off deep in Iowa territory. The pick happened on the 14-yard line, but he returned it to Iowa's 46, and that set up one of many short fields for the Hawkeyes. And then the next 3 possessions, turnover on downs, turnover on downs, turnover on downs. And then by the time the Huskies got the ball next, it's 40-10 at that point. The game is functionally over. They go and score it, or they drive down for a touchdown. It takes them 17 plays to drive on a defensive unit that was at least half backups at that point. Game's over at that point. But that was Washington's only scoring drive of that second half. And so that's just the defense clamping down, making those small adjustments. And they really were small. It's just Jamari mentioned that it was leverage as much as anything. But I mean, Eliot, like you said, all those defensive stats that you brought up, this felt like vintage defensive, Hawkeye football. Big plays everywhere. Really feeding off energy and giving, especially the offense, short fields to work with. And that's how Iowa really pushed ahead and made this game uncompetitive.
Yeah, got to throw in Jay Higgins with 14 tackles as well. Nick Jackson with 11. Xavier Wampa and Cohen Entringer combined for 17 tackles. Which, you mentioned that first drive that ended in a field goal. Man, it might have just been the first half. It might have just been me, but it really seemed like Sebastian Castro was making contact and not wrapping up like at all. And that, I think X had a little bit of that issue in the first half too, but they may have had those issues, but it really seemed like things flipped in that regard in the second half too. Of course, they force the fumbles, they get the picks, but they're actually making tackles. They're wrapping up on contact. So they shored that up in the second half as well. So maybe a tale of two halves for the defense. But we mentioned we mentioned for those of you who don't know, Adam fucking hates a tale of two halves.
And multiple reporters did it on purpose
Yeah.
in the post-game scrums, and I know that they did. I know that they did because they both know that I don't like that. It's just a terrible cliche, guys. It's so worn out. Like, just use different words. It doesn't have to be a tale of two blanks. We are disrespecting Charles Dickens. Anyway.
So I was gonna get to the block field goal and transition to special teams a little bit before we talk. I do want to talk one more thing, defense, but let's go to special teams. Block field goal by Y.A. Black. He didn't have a ton of other stats, but golly, he and Aaron Graves those guys are going to be in the NFL sooner rather than later. Those are NFL quality defensive tackles on the defensive line for Iowa. Graves was awesome. Black, maybe again, that was the only statistic that really will stick out for him today. I mean, he just had one tackle.
He
Other than
had
that,
a pass breakup too, and he
yes,
got it with about his lower forearm.
yeah, yeah,
That's
a big dude.
yeah.
But I wanted to talk about the special teams as well because Reese Dakin, I think he only had two punts, and they were
Mhm.
both. One of them was 50 yards or 55, and the other one was 61. I think I got to pull that up, but yeah, two punts, average of 58 yards, long was 61. Both
And he
inside.
gave up a grand total of two return yards on that too. So we're talking about a net average of 57 yards on his two punts. I mean, that's game changing ability, and that you're getting that out of a true freshman at punter.
It's kind of crazy. Part of me is almost like I want to see more, but like we don't want to see more punts, right? And Iowa scored on 7 straight drives, which is that's pretty complimentary football if you're going to talk about complimentary football. But yeah, long of 61, both inside the 20. Like those were what you would hope to see from Reese Dakin. At the very least, just boom some punts, right? Like, and that's what he did, especially considering the field goal territory. You can't expect him to be Torrey Taylor in terms of placement and getting inside the 10, and you don't have the gunners like Cooper DeJean, right? But he was really good. Caden Weechen was really good too. Kick returns, averaged 23 yards. That one punt return went 37 yards. Looked like he might have had an opportunity to take it to the house at one point. And then Drew Stevens, 3 field goals, one from 37, one from 46, one from 25, and four field goals. You're right. One from 37, one from 46, one from 25, and one from 51. Of course, the one went over the field goal post like it did for Washington, Grady Gross on that one, which they were both kind of odd. But just special teams and the defense did what they needed to do and did what they've traditionally done under Kirk Ferentz.
Yeah, usually when I say so and so would be doing cartwheels over performance like that, it's a metaphor, it's hyperbole. I would not rule it out that LeVar Woods actually does cartwheels over how well the special teams unit played today, because again, Elliot, like you mentioned, every phase you can think of, Iowa did something big. Weegan, his one punt return. Also, we're talking about a blowout Iowa win where they only give up 16 points, and that last one, or the last 6 points happened in garbage time, and Washington punted even less than Iowa. you know, so you know, but you're talking about the return game. Weegan played well. Punting, Dakin was great. Field goals, Drew Stevens, looks like he's back to all Big Ten caliber, something very close to it. And no penalties, nothing ugly. There was one. You probably could have called it running into the punter or running into the kicker on a punt. It certainly wasn't roughing, and I don't think it would have resulted in a first down. Ref kept the flag in his pocket for that one, and honestly, fine. But special teams played extraordinarily well, and then also once again the YA Black block. And when I talked to Jay Higgins after that, the phrase that he used was that is a realistic play that we can do. Like, that is something that you can expect out of YA Black because he's that big, right? His arms are that long. He has that much of a knack for it. So, obviously you want anybody who's going to be, playing a one technique or over the snapper on a field goal to be capable of that. Otherwise, why are you out there? But YA is, special in his ability to disrupt with that size, use that length. He's not just a big dude, he's a very disruptive player. And so, yeah, that is an entire special teams unit having, it's hard to think that they'll have a better full game as a special teams unit than what they did today. And again, I think this was more of a defensive, like, big play game than even the special teams big play game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay. So you mentioned the one thing that's sorry, I was thinking about this while you were talking because you said Iowa or Washington punted once, which is crazy because you mentioned all the turnovers on down or turns up.
turnovers on down. Yeah.
Okay. The multiple, I don't know. Anyway, you mentioned that, which is weird in itself. Also, Washington's offense outgained Iowa 393 to 328. Weird to lose by 24. And they had the ball for 34 minutes and 59 seconds to Iowa's 25 minutes and 1 second.
Yeah,
What?
a big part of that is just the fact that Iowa just kept getting short fields and scoring
Yeah.
relatively quickly
Yeah.
with them. Iowa's starting field position, their average starting field position today was their own 45-yard line. Washington's was on their own 24. Like that is in and of itself, like that is exactly how you want special teams and defense to affect the game. And we'll keep saying it again. Here's your 200 win like present from from Hawkeye Beacon Kirk. We're just going to say complimentary football like 15 times today. But like
He's
this was a
listening.
very complimentary football. Oh no, he is never going to listen to this. Never. But this was so peak complimentary football.
It really was. It really was. The last time, as much as you could call anything close to what Iowa did last year complimentary, I like our headline for the podcast was complimentary football when they beat Rutgers. And of course that was 22-0. They didn't score 40 points, but that was the closest thing to the last time that happened. And today they really did it. I mean, Cade, it's crazy too because you win by 24 points and your starting quarterback completed 8 passes for 108 yards. Like, and maybe this is something that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Maybe that's all he needs to do, right? Like he doesn't
Mhm.
need to be a game breaker. He doesn't need to launch the ball deep, especially when you're playing against a team like Washington that's good, but that's not, elite. And that's pretty much the rest of their schedule. You're going to run into teams that are good, but not great. Wisconsin, Nebraska might, get to a point where they're playing pretty well, but Nebraska is probably going to be the toughest team you play the rest of the way. And playing like they did today is going to win them a lot of games. They're going to be facing some teams that might be a little bit more talented, but man, Will Rogers was good for the most part today. He had a lot of time for the
Oh,
most part today. Jonah Coleman's a good running back. That touchdown over Deshaun Lee was awesome by Denzel Boston. Like Boston's a good receiver. They got talent at Washington. Jed Fish is a good coach. There's a reason. I mean, I went on our board and I said I was more worried about it a few days later than I was when we were podcasting. Like that's a good team that Iowa faced today. But go ahead.
well, it really is a good team, and both Jamari Harris and Jay Higgins made a point to mention just how good Washington's offense is. Kirk Ferentz even mentioned it. Like they move the ball on everybody. They move the ball on Michigan, and Michigan is no slouch on defense even this year too. And Will Rogers had better numbers against the Wolverine pass defense last week when they won. They beat the Wolverines, the then number 10 Wolverines, by 10 points. And Rogers was 21 for 31, had something like 271 yards. Here, 22 for 34, only 195 yards. The one touchdown, the one pick. He had the worst passer rating of the 3 QBs who played a lot of snaps today. There was also Williams, who was doing a lot of sort of change of pace QB play and really started to confound Iowa with his speed and all of that. And so that dual threat QB worked better for Washington. And once Williams really starts to grow as a passer, I think he's going to be a bigger threat. And the next time Iowa plays Washington, if he's still there, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge for Phil Parker. But yeah, the fact that Will Rogers against a defense like the Wolverines just could not put up the same amount of points. He got sacked. I'm not sure how many of the sacks were against him, but most, if not all of them were. And then also the Hawkeyes had like 7 QB hurries on top of their 4 sacks. And so Jay even mentioned this too. Everybody gets, they fall in love with the sacks. That's a sexy stat. Everybody gets that. But when you are getting a pocket passer out of his rhythm, and Will Rogers is very much a pocket passer, when you flush him out, when you start to make him make plays, even if you're not getting home, you are forcing him to make throws outside of his comfort zone. And that's how Iowa's defense really put the clamps down and almost entirely shut the faucet off on the third down conversions that Washington was using to sustain those first two drives.
You mentioned not getting home, but disruption. 7 QB hits today. 2 of them from Nick Jackson. The rest, Jay Higgins, Ethan Hurkett, Deontay Craig, and Brian Allen had one. I'm missing one in there. Max Llewellyn had one as well. But I mean, and they did get home 4 times. I mean, let's see here. Brian Allen had that sack. Was that in the third or fourth quarter? I think it was early fourth. But that's just one of those moments again where it's encouraging. Like we had been talking about in the first half. Man, they're really not getting a ton of great pressure, man. And they dialed it up more in the second, and then those sacks started to come along with it. And when you have a talent like Brian Allen, I mean, we've been talking about it on this podcast, and it's just fun to see it come to fruition, right? Like we've seen the tools, we've seen the ability to make things happen just with physicality, but he's really bought in, and this is almost a Brian Allen Stan podcast, but not quite. And so, not quite. Defense was awesome today. The one thing that I want to hit on about defense, and we can flip to talking a little bit more about Cade and Kaleb Johnson. Zach Lutmer stepping in and playing more snaps at that extra linebacker spot, that Leo spot, rather than Kyler Fisher. I know that's something that's been talked about. We talked about it after the Ohio State game, maybe not much on our other pod to preview the Washington game, but looks like they're almost running like a 4-1-6 out there with Lutmer in, and it's effectively that, but he's playing like a quasi linebacker, kind of like it's like an extra cash almost. And rather than, you'd think that'd be like Cohen Entringer, but the way they've been rotating Cohen and X at the strong safety spot, it just kind of it's a way to get one of your better players on the field. Right? Like, and Lutmer's been improving. We've heard a lot about Lutmer, and maybe better players on the field is a stretch, but a guy who can make plays because he's a redshirt freshman. That's the only reason I say that. And we haven't seen a ton of him other than on special teams. And he came in and let's see if I can find it. Yeah, 3 tackles today, 2 of them solo. So, it's not crazy. He didn't have 10 tackles or anything like that, but it's effective. It's effective in the pass game, especially against a team like Washington with Will Rogers. That's something I'm really excited to learn more about on Tuesday. I told you that I noticed that. I think it was like in the second or third quarter. I was like, dibs, writing about that on Tuesday because that's really interesting. I don't know that we've seen something like that before, other than the flip from the 4-3 to using more of a 4-2-5 with a cash.
Yeah, I believe it was the third quarter, and it was getting to the point where Washington started to just abandon the run completely. And, it's not because of any ineffectiveness on Coleman's part, because that is a dude right there. The only thing that really kept Coleman from passing 100 yards rushing today was the fact that they only gave him the ball 9 times. It was 9 rushes, 80 yards, and a lot of it falling forward. We express a little bit of concern about how, tough he is to bring down, that one of those like 5'9", 230 guys, and it's all just like lower, it's all leg power. Yeah. and so and the fact that Iowa was able to make Washington more one-dimensional. Kirk even mentioned, you can be more aggressive when you know that they can't, run the ball, when you know that they have to pass. You can pin your ears back, and that's when you start to get those Llewellyn big plays, those Brian Allen big plays. And it also helps when you have a guy like Lutmer, who we heard before the season is one of the fastest dudes on the team, full stop, by the way. The fact that you can bring him in and, start to take away some of those quick outs that Washington was using in that first half, just driving to the sideline and beat somebody like Kyler Fisher there. And that's no knock on Fisher, but Lutmer's faster than him, right? Once you can trust Lutmer in coverage against Washington level, caliber wide receivers. And Iowa has a lot of respect for Washington's receivers, even though a bunch of them are new from last year. Once you can trust him on that, and you already know that he has the athleticism advantage on somebody like Fisher, who is more of a, either a smaller linebacker or a larger safety, whichever one you want to, characterize him as, then that opens the door for so much for him, and it gets the Iowa defense even faster. And considering some of those breakdowns that we've seen from the secondary this year, and there were a couple in this game too, increasing that speed, increasing that ability to take away those quick routes, taking away those elements that hamper Iowa's pass rush, right? Being able to counter that is just going to make this defense even more dangerous.
You mentioned coverage, right? Coverage almost would be, and it being a safety and converting to a linebacker where you might have to do some man coverage makes that a little tougher. I mean, converting to a linebacker, playing a quasi DB linebacker position makes that a little tougher because, safeties, zone, whatever. But I would almost say ability to attack. Oh my gosh, tackle in space. But he's been playing special teams and doing that and honing that skill. So because what you don't want is for him to be outsized by a running back in the flat and for him to just get plowed over, right? Or if they get a hat on a hat and he can't make a play with an offensive lineman, right? That would make it a little bit more difficult. But I mean, he's shown that he can make those tackles in one-on-one situations. So I really like the adjustment. You almost wish that they would have made the adjustment for the Ohio State game, but there's only so much you can do in that moment. I think preparation it just would have been positive had it happened in the Ohio State game, but it didn't. Sure. So we're moving ahead. Now, to the offense, Kaleb Johnson is who I wrote about post game. I mean, I was talking about it. If you listen to the post game presser or you heard me say it, it's just like it's Kaleb Johnson did it again. Like, anybody surprised? No. Okay, we're all on the same page. 21 carries, 166 yards for 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions, 22 yards, 1 touchdown. His first receiving touchdown of his career at Iowa, and Cade McNamara's first touchdown pass for Iowa that was against a Power 4 team. Step in the right direction. Kaleb Johnson's awesome is essentially what we're getting at. Dude has just taken his game to another level. It's the physicality. It's the patience. He said he watched Le'Veon Bell's. And I think that's who we all think of when we're talking about running, being patient as a running back. And he made that reference. It's just, I remember last season, we were talking about Jazz Patterson versus Kaleb. It's like Jazz just hits the hole, man. And sometimes that's what you need. But Kaleb's doing that when he sees the opportunity this year, and he's patient enough to wait for something and then explode through it, like those first 3 steps. He's just a different running back this year. He's just different. And the offensive line helps that itself as well, but he's among the best in the country, and who knows what he would do if he was in the Mountain West like Ashton Jeanty, right? like who's to say that he's not right there with Jeanty?
Yeah, I think you absolutely do have to factor in things like quality of competition. And, Kaleb Johnson's going up against a lot more dudes who are going to be playing on Sundays than Jeanty does. And don't get me wrong, Jeanty's going to be playing on Sundays too, because a lot of times that looks like what would happen if you just drop Barry Sanders, 30, 35 years into the future and be like, all right, go nuts. Turf is blue now. He'd have a lot of questions, a lot of them, but that's a special talent over there too. But when you talk about the growth that Kaleb Johnson has made as a runner, a lot of it has just been finally buying into what Liddell Betts has been telling him, and using his 10-year NFL career as your proof of concept there. Like, there is a way that you want to attack the hole. And what has sort of really clicked for Kaleb Johnson this year is, and I think, Eliot, you're right, that it's a better mesh with the offensive line. And it was sort of the same way with Tyler Goodson versus, like Gavin Williams, for example. Gavin Williams was able to navigate sort of I don't want to call him a shoddy offensive line, but he was able to navigate situations where maybe somebody is more likely to miss a block in front of him. And when Kaleb Johnson, especially as a freshman and as a sophomore, that would cause him to dance a little bit in the backfield. This time, when he's patient, he is not dancing and waiting, right? He's not tentative. He is waiting for that hole to open up. And yeah, that takes patience, it takes vision, it takes trust. And I think that's the big difference is when you're dancing and you don't know where to go, that's sort of a lack of trust. It's a lack of faith in, the play that's been called for you. And sometimes rightly so, right? Like sometimes that line that you've been given has been blown up and you got to figure out what to do, what to do next. This is a little bit different. This is, I see that my guy is winning this block. He has not won this block. It's not my job to get there until he does it, right? It's a more complete understanding, excuse me, of how to run, how to be a running back, essentially. So it is a lot of fun to watch. It is sort of, we complimentary, but it's not only Kaleb Johnson growing, it's not only the offensive line growing, but it is those two working together. It is him understanding how that line is going to be opening up these holes. It is him trusting the call that is being made. And God, like it's him being in a better offense too.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said there made me think for those of you who maybe didn't play college football right here. I guess what I can liken this to and the demeanor with which Kaleb carries himself now or the aura that he exudes, it's that of if you're like starting a new job or you're picking up a new task, playing a different sport for the first time and it clicks. It's like, "Oh, I got it now. I get it. Done. We got this." That's what you're getting from Kaleb Johnson now. He gets it. He knows what he's doing, and he knows that he knows what he's doing, if that makes sense, right? It's just he's a different personality this time around, and it's showing on the football field too. Big player, man. And he's probably going to be in the NFL next year. We saw some really encouraging things from Kamari Moulton today on some of those gadget kind of fun trickery plays by Tim Lester this afternoon. So that's obviously encouraging. And TJ Washington back at running back, I guess now. So we'll see how that shakes out. But and even in talking about Kaleb, Dayton Howard had his first catch and it was a touchdown today. First catch for his collegiate career with the Hawkeyes. And Cade McNamara kind of gave Kaleb credit for it because those linebackers are starting to creep up towards the line of scrimmage, and then he just hit Dayton over the middle, and Dayton basically could have walked in. So he's really grown, obviously, in his game, and Kirk's like, he could be good. He's a great prospect. We still got to see. He's just grown physically. He's really bought in as a blocker, and then to see him rewarded on that type of play was cool. And you can even see the potential just with the frame. Like he walks on the field, it's like, oh, I could see that guy being a Division I wide receiver, and so to have it come to fruition for him today was cool. Yeah, I don't
And one thing I really liked about that play that Howard made was, the back half of it was the catch and run of it too. And he looked pretty dynamic in the open field. It was a matter of, I'm going to beat you to that corner and you're not going to stop me. And to not only be able to make that catch, a solid catch, and, McNamara did not have a great day thrown to his wide receivers, if you look at the totals altogether. But, he delivers it right where it had to be. Howard was right where he had to be on top of that, too. And then it's all right, ball's in your hand and you're in open space, go make a play. And he knew exactly what to do. So that is one of those situations where, you really start to earn a little bit of trust on that coaching staff when you get put in that position to go make that play, go get six, and you do it. And so for him to get rewarded like that here in game six of his redshirt freshman season has got to feel good for him, got to feel good for McNamara. And while we're talking about guys sort of, breaking through on the stat sheet, also the first catch for Seth Anderson today. And it was a
Yeah.
big one too.
Yeah, it was. He looked good today for the most part. I mean, they had that 3-and-out. I think it was on the first drive where they tried a swing pass to him to get the first. I think it was on the first drive. It might not have been. It might have been later than that. But somebody said on our, I think it was on our board, it's like, never throw the ball to Seth Anderson again. It's like, dude, he's been hurt all year. What are we talking about?
Yeah. Marvin Harrison Jr. wasn't going to get the first down on that play the way it was
No,
defended. Like that,
no.
that wasn't on Seth at all.
No, it's a good time to get Seth back too, with in lieu of Brown entering the portal or planning to enter the portal too. Just as far as depth at the wide receiver spot, you're not having to dip into walk-ons. Of course, we were thinking KJ Parker might see the field this year. It's starting to look like he's just gonna keep his red shirt unless he sees the field coming up here for whatever reason. But a guy that we're excited about, just a little small. So getting in the weight room will be productive for him this offseason. One thing that we have to hit on before we get out of here, Joe from Des Moines. I can't remember his last name. I heard it on the radio. Did you hear what his name was?
I don't think Joe remembers his last
I
name at
don't think
this
so
point either.
either. It sounds like Joe was possibly a little intoxicated along with being concussed from that football. If you haven't heard the interview, I'll drop the link in the comments, or sorry, in the description, because it's so funny. He sounded like he was a little bit drunk, and you could kind of see it in the video after a replay from a few of the news stations. But he said he went to put his hands up to catch it, and the ball was moving too fast for him to react, and just hit him right in the dome. That was so funny. And then if you haven't seen the video, that's on my Twitter as well. I can drop that in the description too. But man, it was
And
you
and not only does the ball hit him in the dome, it ricochets a good 40 feet. It almost got out of the end zone, and he was not close to like the sideline either.
no.
It was a prodigious bounce off of his dome.
And he moved. He moved into it. Like he was sitting in one spot or standing, and he said, "I got it."
And he got it.
He got it right to the forehead. But yeah, that's another highlight of the game that I think a lot of folks will remember. I think he got up after getting hit because he went down to his knees, went like limp, and then everybody gave him a standing ovation over in the crowd over there. Just
You're
a
not dead.
right, a great moment.
Pat Anger, so perfect that he was in the booth for that too, because he was loving it.
Just
And
giggled
I
the
didn't
whole
get
interview.
a chance to listen to it until after the game. And so we're in the press box, and I finally click on it because Pat had tweeted it out like, this guy's a Hawkeye legend. I'm like, all right, buddy, let's. And I was like, tears were forming in the corners of my eyes, straining not to laugh harder at it. It's perfect. Like it is. Hawkeye legend is not an exaggeration here. You got to hear it.
You got to watch it. You got to hear it. Again, both of those links will be in the description along with our stories from today, plus the link to sign up if you're not a premium subscriber. We would love to have you join us. We got intel on recruiting. We got intel on women's basketball recruits coming in. Story there from Adam today as who was the commit? What was her name from Alaska?
Layla Hayes from Wasilla, Alaska. She's a 6'5" center. And so we've got some highlights of hers in that commit article that we posted. She committed at the game, essentially.
Yeah.
She committed via sweatshirt, which is sort of a new one, but she was wearing a sweatshirt that said, "Go Hawks, I'm home." And, that is, I guess Instagram is just so, 2000 late. People don't even say that, but we're bringing it back to committing via clothes. So yeah, Layla Hayes, and we know that the staff is really excited about her. There's some other, players that are here in town or in Iowa City on campus and we'll be visiting for the rest of the weekend. We've got some intel on that on our premium board and the press box. So if you're not a subscriber, you are missing out on some fun recruiting info.
Yeah, we got a ton of it. We got men's basketball recruiting. They had Badara Diakite on an official visit this weekend. We're going to get intel on that as well as soon as tomorrow. Plus a ton of football visitors on campus, 3 4-stars. 1 4-star who ranks in the top 100 in the country, and Max Sutter, an official visitor in 2025. And they've got a real shot at some of these guys. Drayshawn Ross, who's going to be a pretty damn good. I mean, he's already a pretty damn good wrestler as well. So tons of great content on iowa.rivals.com right now and or Hawkeye Beacon. So and basketball right around the corner too. We got all the info there, and we'll be talking to people behind the scenes throughout this remainder of the football season and basketball, both with the teams and recruiting. So definitely want to head over there today. Again, it's iowa.rivals.com/subscribe. That link will be in the description. It's in the description every episode. So you think you don't want to now, you change your mind, you can head right here, click that button, click that link, and it'll take you there. But we appreciate you tuning in to this episode of HawkCast. As always, drop that like, drop that comment. Let us know how you're feeling. That's a big win. Really nice win over a good team today for the Hawkeyes. We will wrap it up here. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button there on YouTube as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave that rate and review. We know a ton of you listen on Apple Podcasts. That's where most people listen to their podcasts. Leaving that rate and review really does help us out a lot. So please go do that. And again, check us out, iowa.rivals.com/subscribe to get premium content today. I am Eliot Clough at Eliot Clough on Twitter, joined as always by Adam Jacoby. For now, we will see you next time.